Hello, and welcome to Not Very Scary Stories. This episode will be a personal story of my own. Be sure to leave a sub, follow, or whatever you can on whatever platform you're on. Also, be sure to leave a review so people will know to listen in as well. I'd like to thank you guys for the support thus far on all platforms you can find us on, including YouTube. I'd also like to remind everyone that if you have any scary stories or experiences you'd like to share, email me at notveryscaryent@gmail.com and tell me how you'd like to be credited. I'm Zenith Dark Sky, and I'll be your host tonight. Enjoy. Now allow me to preface this story with the fact that these are ongoing occurrences. This story does need a little backstory though, so we'll start when I was a teenager. I'm married now, currently, to my high school sweetheart. We met in high school, and after a while I started taking her on dates, or we would hang out at one another's house. Her parents are divorced, so sometimes I'd go eat dinner with her father's side of the family, or go over to celebrate a holiday. Sometimes her mother would come down from where she lived, about 5 hours away, and stay the weekend with her friends. And that's where I'd go with my wife while her mother was down. She was only my girlfriend at the time, of course. When I had gotten with my wife, it wasn't long into the relationship when my wife had told me about her grandfather's house, and where her mother currently lived, and how she thought it was haunted. She would text me, freaked out about her mother's dogs would start barking at the downstairs door, or perhaps she'd hear a knock or a slam downstairs. Keep in mind, this house wasn't 2 stories, just had a basement. Apparently, the basement wasn't like normal basements, though. There wasn't just a large utility or storage room. There was a hallway with several rooms that stemmed off. Now, I don't quite remember, but she had told me who amongst her mother's side stayed in what room when her mother was young. I don't quite remember any of it being super relevant to the story though, so we'll go on. The only things I can remember that are fairly relevant, or could be at least, are that on several occasions whoever had slept down there in a bedroom, often when they were young, had stories of levitating off the bed. Also, some stories of waking up in the middle of the night and seeing several dark shadows around the bed that were in the room. Even apparently seeing some apparitions dressed how slaves were depicted from that era, so take that for what you will. Fast forward back to when my wife would stay there with her mother on the weekends, holidays, summer, or whenever. She complained to me pretty often that she'd hear all sorts of noises, and like I said, the dogs would even take notice and bark. Apparently the dogs would even lay where they could watch the door, or even sit in front of it. As far as my wife is aware, there were no actual reasons for the house to be haunted, though. She believes that her grandfather's first wife, or someone related to him, I can't remember, was very benevolent. She's someone who believes that the negative energy could attach itself to the house and items and potentially bring about inhuman entities. Well, not long after my wife and I had gotten together, her grandfather had passed, or perhaps before even. I can't quite recall that either. Either way, the house got tied up in some inheritance debates and legal stuff. His new wife hadn't apparently been so friendly either, so you know how that can go sometimes. My wife's mother had been left a large sum of money, but not the house apparently, so my wife's mother, who was dating a contractor at the time, decided to just start fresh. Buy a plot of land, build her own house. Not a bad plan, especially since houses in the area are some of the most expensive on average in the state. Fast forward a little later, and my wife and I were still dating, but steady. Her mom had built the house and was living in it. I was out of school and had a job, or maybe even about to be out of school. Not quite sure. Life moved pretty fast around then, and as my wife was just a bit younger than me, so she still had a little school left. Either way, we'd sometimes go up to her mother's new house and stay the night on certain weekends or special occasions. The only thing off-putting about this new house to me was there was a hallway that ran parallel to the living room and dining room kitchen area, as that was all an open floor plan in the middle of the house, and anywhere past the door frame for this hallway just didn't feel right. You would walk left for a bedroom, right for a bedroom, and almost straight, but a little to the right for a bathroom. Being as we're still young and dating, obviously we had to stay in separate rooms. So I took the left room as she took the right, and that's where we slept. I always noticed how I couldn't quite sleep so well in either of those rooms. Also, those rooms were always a little colder than normal. Time went on, though. Nothing of note really happened. Eventually, I got married to my wife, and her mother and I, almost stereotypically, grew to not be fond of each other, but tolerate each other. Either way, at some point I got into streaming and content creation, so I would rarely leave the house for long periods of time for special occasions or anything. Except for one time. We had gone for a Thanksgiving weekend, if I'm not mistaken. That was all well and good, thank you for asking. Also, we're married, so this time we were allowed to share a room, just so you understand. All of our stuff was in one room this time. We both had noted in a late night conversation that it's really hard to sleep in that section of the house. We hadn't really talked about it before. We were still able to go to sleep eventually. The day after was when we were packing up to leave, and I had walked into the living room and dozed off on a lounge chair while my wife was finishing her luggage. I was only asleep for a little bit, but I had what felt like one of the longest dreams of my life in that chair. I was sitting in my old bedroom, from when I was very young. A back corner and a double-wide trailer. I had a window in real life, but in my dream this was a window that protruded slightly and had a bench attached to the window. I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about, and I'm sure it has a name, but I don't care to remember it right now. In this scenario, my bed was attached to that bench. There are blankets strewn about and pillows. It seemed like it was probably just the way I kept my bed when I was young. She was sitting against the window, and it was daylight. She looked as beautiful as ever, even though she was almost a silhouette against the light. But it wasn't that bright, so it lit the room more than it obscured her. While she looked this way, she also had a menacing aura to her. I couldn't really hear anything happening in the dream, almost as if there was no sound. I was just kind of watching her talk and watching her laugh, but then she stopped. When she stopped, things suddenly got a bit darker. With this darker light, she kept her smile, closed lips, and just grinning. It felt so evil, but didn't really look different than normal, and then she stared. She stared for what felt like forever. As I started to realize how odd this felt, I had begun noticing that her grin was slightly corrupted. A little bigger than normal at the corners, but not too much as to look cartoonish, and not a huge smile, just a grin still, somehow. Then came the pressure. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was choking. Her arms were in her lap, though. There was no one else there, yet I felt like I was surrounded by negativity, and I couldn't breathe. I faded out, and as soon as I did, I awoke back into reality, except I still couldn't breathe. Couldn't even move. Disclaimer, I've had sleep paralysis, and this wasn't it. Not for me, anyways. Anytime I experienced it, I couldn't even open my eyes. It was more like my mind was awake and just didn't wake my body. This wasn't the same. I could move my eyes and I could feel the panic, but I couldn't feel any hands or arms around me. I could hear my wife in the other room, but I couldn't yell. I thought I was about to die. Legitimately, I thought this was it. Terrified, my body shot up. Then everything felt normal again. I told my wife what had happened, and she agreed that it was creepy and the house was creepy too. Then she told me that her mother shared with her that she had brought things from her father's house, the haunted one. She had, of course, brought some cups and such, as you do when you move, but also a lamp that his first wife had gotten him. I didn't like that, and neither did my wife. Good thing we were leaving that day. I didn't know the location of the lamp in the house, but I had a good feeling as to what region of the house it was located in. Fast forward again, my wife is pregnant and we've decided to move into my mother-in-law's house since she won't be there for a while. I haven't thought much about what had happened except that she needs to remove the lamp before I move in. We haven't moved yet and we're going to a baby shower held at that house while her mom still lives there. We got to this house and I wasn't aware if the lamp was still inside or not. To be honest, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was too busy talking with the extended family and whatnot. I went to the restroom past the door frame that I mentioned earlier that separated this part of the house. I go to close the door behind me and that's when I hear it. I hear the lowest growl I've ever heard in my life. Quiet, but low enough that I almost miss it entirely. But I didn't. I hear it, and I stop for a second. I look around to see if it's perhaps one of my mother-in-law's dogs, or perhaps ours as we brought our dog. Nothing. I close the door, do my business, then leave the room. Looking for my wife immediately. As soon as I found her, I told her what I had heard, and she said to me, "Well, that lamp is still here, and it's on the counter in that bathroom." The lamp that I was now assuming was the root of the issue was no more than a foot away from me when I passed that door frame. And that's right where I heard the growl. I made sure to explain to her mother that the lamp needed to be removed before I ever moved into that house, and she would laugh but accept those terms every time it was mentioned. I wasn't joking though. I'm a skeptic myself, but I knew something was off. We ended up moving in not too long after that had happened. Her mother promised me she was going to take the lamp out, but there it was, in the bathroom still when we moved in. So before she had even left that night, I told her to be sure to take it. She complained to me it wouldn't fit in with their stuff, which was bullshit, by the way, but I accepted that she would at least unplug it and put it in the garage, but it didn't help. For weeks we would lay in bed, and while the rest of the house felt okay, the baby's future room didn't. The room I used to sleep in on visits to the left in the parallel hallway. While I lay trying to sleep every night, my wife and I would hear subtle knocks and bangs coming from the garage where the lamp resided. Now at first I just told myself it was the house settling. I had never slept in the master bedroom, which was on the opposite side of the house from the hallway, but now the same side of the house that the lamp in the garage was on. So, I didn't know what kind of sounds I'd hear. We also had animals or pets as well, so you never know what kind of sounds you'll hear in the middle of the night. This helped me to sleep better, but not great. One thing that still sticks with me to this day about this time frame is that I didn't dream. Ever. Not once, the whole month or so that lamp stayed in the house. Later, her mother had come and retrieved the lamp, and after that, it confirmed my fears. I didn't hear those sounds at night anymore. It was silent, except for our pets, of course. It must have been the lamp, right? After that, everything had been pretty normal. The baby's room still felt off, but not as much anymore, just residual fear. Or so I thought. Last week, real time, I was talking to our roommate, who we moved in to help with bills and to help him out as well. I was sitting on the couch that faces the back of the house in the living room and faces the kitchen/dining room area from the front of the living room. We were talking as he had started to walk back to his room, which is the one across from the baby's room in the parallel hallway. He was standing next to the door frame of the hallway, so it's not like the door frame was in the corner of my vision. It was almost central, with the exception of a large man whom I was talking to. Then I saw it. As I listened to him, I saw what appeared like the shoulder of someone wearing a white shirt walk by him in the hallway. It felt so natural and real that I didn't even look at it. I just let it pass him. His girlfriend was in his room, so I guess I just thought it was her, but I realized some things within seconds. His girl is shorter than him, and as he's 6'5", and this white shirt was over his own shoulder height. I didn't tell him what I had seen, just asked if someone was there. He looked and looked, but nothing. Then I let him know what I had seen. He didn't like that, and neither did I. We were terrified. I still am. My main question, though, is how was it so tall? And is it over, or did it just begin?